All right, welcome to Get Nisty, the series that breaks compliance out of the checkbox trap and turns it into a real security advantage. No fluff, no FUD, just practical strategies to make compliance work for your MSP. I'm Jared Kasner, and I'm joined by my co-founder of Blacksmith InfoSec and co-host of Get Nisty, Michael Zabarski. This week's episode features special guest Adam Alter from Humanize IT. We are doing a special two-part series with Adam, so if you like this one, make sure to check out part two on the Humanize IT podcast. The link is in the show notes. Adam, for those few listeners who are not familiar with you, would you mind giving a brief introduction of yourself?
Yeah, my name's Adam Walter. I was a corporate security guy. I spent the last probably up until 2017 as a corporate security manager for critical infrastructure for working with large environments. And I went out on my own and formed my own company for CIO consulting. After that, I bought a software company to build out a platform so that we could deliver better audits and better communication with our clients. And so I kind of took that seam, that security incident event manager idea, and applied it to account management. And so now you have Humanize IT today, which stitches together all your tools into one format so you can talk to your clients.
Thank you. So, as always, we're going to be answering listener questions, real ones. So, let's dive in. Mike, you want to get us started?
Sure thing. So this week's question actually comes from one of our clients rather than from one of the MSPs themselves. So one of our MSP's clients. First up is Marisol, the office manager at a dental practice in Tampa, who asks, our MSP keeps telling us we need to treat compliance like a program, not a project. I think I understand what that means, but I have no idea what it looks like in practice. Can you help clear that up for me? All
Man,
right. Nice
yeah, I got
opening.
that one. So yeah, I'll head off, and you guys kind of, I guess. So being in large systems, being in large environments, the big failure of a lot of systems, whether it's NIST or CMMC or anything that you're adopting down to ITIL, is you assume there's a point in which, hey, you're done. And that's not the point of these frameworks. The point of the framework is to give you an operating system to work within. So like, hey, I'm going to commit to being NIST. These are the libraries, this is the families we're going to try to achieve. And so to me, what does that look like? Let's go back to a conversation we had about 15 minutes ago. School. You want your kid to go to school. What kind of school should they go to? Should they go to a parochial school? Should they go to a public school? Should they go to a science-based school or an art-based school? They're all going to give great educations, but they're going to be focused kind of on a different style. And so in your company, when you want to do a compliance framework, you decide what kind of culture do you want to adopt? Like which one fits what you want to do? Does this one explain it better than other ones? There's 100 of them out there. You could homeschool. You can do your own compliance framework. Not a lot of people are going to be happy with that, but hey, you can.
So, please don't do that.
Please don't do that. You can self-implement. It's great. No auditing necessary. But like with the one large environment I work with, we self-implemented NIST, and then we went and had a third party come in and do an audit. And so we kind of got the best of both worlds. We're kind of homeschooled, but we're following the standard curriculum. And then we had somebody come in and do a standardized test to say, are you actually doing this? And then every year we evolved. We got better at things. We got better at implementing things. We didn't have to say, I'm not doing this. I can now say, oh, yes, we're doing that now. We have two-factor across the board. We can check that box and say, we're doing two-factor. And so to me, that's what the world looks like when it comes to ever evolving, adopting a framework, adopting a world that you're going to live in.
Yeah, and I'll add just to make it tangential for the dental practice for you, Marisol. If someone needs braces, you're going to put braces on them. You're going to maintain them. They're going to come in. They're going to tighten the wires. You're going to get everything in order, get all the teeth lined up, and then you're done-ish. But then they still have to wear the retainer to make sure it doesn't all crash and burn and make the whole braces experience a complete waste of time, money, effort, pain, etc. And so security program is very much like that, right? There's a destination in the aspect of getting the controls in place, but then you continue maintaining that security program to make sure that, much similar to someone's teeth, doesn't all fall apart and you have to start over. So that's the piece where there's ongoing risk management, risk meetings, making sure your controls are still in place, regular dental or ortho checkups, etc.
Yeah, I'm going to take it a step further, Mike. Right, the braces are a project. You're going to look at the mouth of teeth, and you're going to say, okay, this mouth of teeth needs a palate expander first, and then the braces, and then the headgear. Right, these are all discrete projects that go along the way of that program. But the program is getting that mouth to end up with a beautiful smile. My 7-year-old came to me yesterday saying, "Dad, I don't want to have a messed up face." And I was like, "What? Time out. Like, you have some messed up teeth, but you don't have a messed up face. Let's be very clear about this here, and we can fix this." And now she's getting nervous about the palate expander she's going to have to get in. But fortunately, she got her mother's face and not my face. Otherwise, she would have a messed up face.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
You know what we need, Jared? Speaking of palate expanders, we need to somehow cross your daughter and my daughter, because my daughter has had a bunch of teeth pulled out. She's got a bunch of empty space in her mouth right now.
Nice. All right. So Mike, you talked about the braces. What's the equivalent of a palate expander in compliance?
Yeah, so I guess the palate expander would be a tool or a control of how do you get to that, right? So whether it's, hey, we need to implement multi-factor, or hey, we need to get policies in place, or whatever one of the many controls under HIPAA is, the palate expander would be a control. And really, again, depending on the framework, a lot of them don't tell you, hey, you need to use tool X, like, hey, you need to use this palate expander. A lot of them will talk about, hey, here's the end goal. Here's what you need to end up with, right? You need to monitor logs. You need to end up with enough room in your mouth. And so, again, just kind of going back to that, they're not going to tell you, hey, go put in palate expander. They'll say, hey, if you need braces, guess what? They're going to need to expand the palate. How you do that is up to you. You can remove teeth. You can put in a palate expander. There's different ways to solve that problem. But it will give you the guidance of, here's the end goal that you need to achieve.
Yep.
You haven't done any dental jokes yet.
Let's say, Adam, do you want to help torture this metaphor a little bit further?
As somebody who had 5 years of braces, I think it's adorable, you people who get away with like 1 year of just like some simple stuff. And so for me, again, it was more of a lifestyle. Like, people are like, I get braces. Okay, that's your initial layout of compliance. We now have a system in place. Now, my wife and kid chose to do Invisalign instead. It's a different system. It's going to achieve the same results, a different process. And so when you're figuring out compliance for your company, what does that look like? What system do you want to put in place to achieve the same results? The results are, you are secure. You are moving towards a way of saying, we did our due diligence. We tried really hard to make sure that this is going to work and that we're not going to lose data. Our clients aren't going to be affected. We don't have downtime. Whatever it is that you're afraid of in your business, the compliance checks are going to help you get there. Now, you might choose braces. You might choose yanking out teeth so you can get to braces. It might be that you want to do Invisalign because you don't want to have the look up front. You want to have the option of doing things a little differently. I had braces for 5 years. They sucked.
What about the full headgear, Adam? Full headgear with the...
I had the full headgear. I had everything you can imagine. It was a rough 5 years for Adam. But at the end, I had a jaw that now aligned. They had to yank out my wisdom teeth. All this was part of a process to get me to a place where I had a normal mouth, where I was able to chew food normally, and I didn't have to deal with a lot of the issues I had with having a very crammed mouth and teeth everywhere. Your business has holes all over it. You don't know what they are because you can't see and you haven't looked. And if you have kids, you know how great they are at redirecting. If you say, hey, look, that you need to stop doing this. It's really causing problems in your life. You're like, but Bob over here, but Jared's doing it much. No, that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about the other people. We're talking about you and how you're aligning things up. And so as a company, you can't say, I mean, there is a little trick to security to say, at least I'm more secure than the person over there. But the attackers don't care. They're looking at everybody. We're at a position in life in IT right now where attackers don't have to pick and choose their targets. They can attack millions at a time and look for the one who is not compliant or who is missing some obvious holes. And those compliance families are there to pull in those holes, to get rid of those things that are obvious, so that you can continue to work and improve on other things.
That's exactly right.
I think that's a big piece of it is the assessment. It's the don't be the ostrich that just sticks its head in the sand, has no clue what's going on. Like you can accept risk, right? You can manage it by accepting it, mitigating it, doing whatever. You don't have to put everything in place right away. It's going to be a process, but being aware of the risks and saying, hey, we don't have this technology that's going to enable us to do this in a secure manner today. We've budgeted for it for 2027, whatever. But we're aware of that, so we're going to change our business process a little bit to mitigate some of that risk and make it more secure for now until we have this technology too. So there's different ways, as you said, to kind of solve for that.
I like to think compliance families have a bad name, right? It's terrible to call something compliance. I like to think it as best practices. And people are like, well, what's best practice in security? Like, well, which family do you want to talk about? Some have different focuses than others. And so what are the best practices for your industry? Let's go look and see which control family. Maybe it's CIS, maybe it's CMMC, maybe it's NIST. And so the great thing about NIST is if you're doing governmental work, you're going to align with them really well. You're going to resonate with them. You're going to be able to say, oh, well, yeah, we are NIST compliant. And they can say, well, can you give us your controls so we can review them and make sure we're comfortable doing business with you? Sure. You give them your controls. But if you're a CIS shop and your partner was a NIST shop, it makes the conversation a little hard. And so what I like to think of control families as is they are best practices and suites and ways to communicate. And so when you're aligned with the rest of your industry, the beautiful part about SOC 2 is that it, while very loose, is a great way to communicate because we all have the same expectations. Like I'm looking for this particular control because it's the one I am most worried about being a financial business, or this is the one I am most worried about being a hosting provider. And so I can zone in on the right one. Whereas like, oh crap, your CMMC, which one is it? That's, oh crap, I got to find the right one to map to mine. So we used to, in one of my old organizations, one guy had taken it upon himself to write a Bible, a translation utility of 3 different compliance families that we had to observe in that agency, of which control mapped to which control in which family. And I just said, have at it. I want nothing to do with that project, but I do want to see the end result.
The great thing is there are plenty of tools that are out there today that have done all that cross mapping. There's secure control framework, there's universal control framework, there's OSCAL, there's a bunch of different.
This was 15 years ago, so
yeah, there is stuff. 15 years ago was a different world. Today we live in a much nicer place. In any event, Marisol, I hope this has cleared things up for you, and please have your MSP listen to this. Learning how to communicate with your clients, for the MSPs that are listening, learning how to communicate with your clients in their language will make a world of difference when you're trying to have these conversations so that you can actually speak to them in a way that they understand. But now we're going to pivot to our next question, which comes from Ryan, the COO of a manufacturing company in Iowa, who asks, our MSP keeps pushing us for quarterly reviews, but they also bring us statistics that aren't helpful. Because of that, I've just stopped attending these meetings. How can I get them to stop wasting my time? Yikes. There's a lot to unpack here. Adam, let me let you take the first crack at this one also, because I think this is sort of right in your wheelhouse.
So when I told you the story of how I came from the corporate world, I was security director, critical infrastructure. I had risen through the ranks. I'm a computer science nerd by training, who became an engineer, who became a manager. I'm not the usual sales guy who kind of decided to start a business. So when I started out in the world, I burned out of corporate. I was making really great money, and I was just tired of it. And so my wife said, start a business. You can consult for small businesses. You loved working with small businesses. So, okay, I'll try that. So I took all my corporate knowledge, all my understanding of, things like NIST or ITIL or COBIT. I took all those best practices. And I thought, I'm going to help out small businesses. And I started by helping a few private schools talk to their MSPs. They had all these issues. I wasn't going to solve them. I had taken off my engineering hat. So I sat across the table from MSPs presenting their findings to these schools. And I got to tell you, people, I am a computer science nerd. I like to read technical documents. I read peer-reviewed journals for fun on physics. That is me. I'm a nerd. You guys were boring me. And these were the best. Like, these were the best MSPs in the area. Like, these are ones that are doing very well. These are MSPs who ended up getting bought out and had great retirement plans. But I sat across a table from these people as they were explaining their ticket SLAs. They were explaining how they used Azure, and like this big Bible of like just book like this thick of all the things they were going to do for me. And I was like, how are we going to help them as a school? And that stumped them. Never once did any MSP sitting across the table from me, I'm representing these schools. Not once did any of you say how you helped educational institutions. And these were the best in the area. They were really good at troubleshooting. They were really good at technical support, but none of them talked about the person across the table from them. They never asked one question about, hey, what kind of kids do you guys have here? You know, what's your focus of your school? Do you guys focus on theology? Do you focus on science? Do you focus on art? Like, what is it that you guys do here? Nothing. And so they wrote off these schools as being break fix shops that were worth nothing. So I went in and I audited them myself. I said, hey, let me ask real questions. Like, what do you guys actually want to accomplish? What's a pain in your day? And they talked about how, dealing with iPads was a pain, how they wanted to move to Chromebook programs, but they couldn't because the internet wasn't trustworthy. It was always dropping. And they just doubled their speed from 10 megs to 20 megs. They don't understand why they can't have 300 people online. They doubled their speed, people. Never mentioned that there's gig to the curb here, and no MSP mentioned that to them. Oh, and it's subsidized because it's E-rate. So they actually saved money moving to gig over their copper. And now they can do all these things. They can do Chromebooks. They can do really great online education programs and do live streaming of materials. And they don't have to worry about testing cycles getting interrupted because of lack of bandwidth. These are very real problems they were having that nobody was talking to them about that should have been uncovered in a QBR. But MSPs were so concerned. They were so self-centered and so narcissistic. They did not ask the business what they needed, what their pain problems were. So I moved schools from $1,500 break fix accounts to 9,000 MRR entities. This has been going on for 10 years. So do the math in your head. That's $720,000 of revenue that these MSPs lost.
So
Yeah, and I saw the same thing when Mike and I first started Blacksmith. We went direct to small businesses, and one of the first ones that we signed on, they said, "This is amazing," and we said, like we'd be happy to help your MSP implement this. And they said, "Oh, our MSP is they just do break fix. All they're doing is quick tickets for us, and we're ready to fire them and hire somebody new." And I said, "Okay, great. Well, I'm happy to make some introductions to folks that do this." Turns out that the MSP that they were working with, they were the last break fix shop for that, or last break fix client for that MSP. They'd converted everybody else over to a managed services processes. But they had never had the conversation with this particular end client to say, well, here's what else we can do for you. They just assumed that the end client wanted to keep things as cheap as humanly possible and was happy to muddle along. And because they never asked the question, to your point, they left tons of cash on the table, and they ended up with a client who was this close to leaving them. Turns out we were able to salvage that relationship, and the MSP now is doing a fully managed service offering for them, and both the client and the MSP are much happier. But if you don't ask the question, you're not going to get the results. And so, Ryan, if your MSP is not asking you questions, you need to be pushing them to ask questions and maybe ram it down their throat that, hey, I have a business that I am trying to run here. Here are the things that I'm trying to do. Here's how you can help me, right? Or quite frankly, I don't even know how you can help me. Here's what I'm trying to do. Can you help me with this? And see if your MSP isn't able to answer those questions about how they can help you, that's where you might be dealing with the wrong MSP, right? The MSPs. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm violating my own principle here because I interrupt all the time.
Yeah, no, go.
As an MSP, you need to stop and listen. I need to listen to Jared and what he's saying here. I need to be patient because I am not the expert in his business. I need him to explain his business to me. And that's what a QBR is supposed to be, a quarterly business review. We're not reviewing what the MSP is doing. We're reviewing what the business is doing, their pain points, the things that are going well, the things that are not going well. How can we help them? So as they're explaining, like, we just doubled our internet speed and we can't seem to, we're always getting interrupted in our online testing cycles, which we're required to by the state. And then it's like, wait a minute, let's review that just for a second. You're telling me that you keep getting kicked off during your testing cycles? And an engineer looks down, goes, yeah, that's not enough. You just doubled. Did you talk to any of our engineers about making sure we have the right size of a pipe? Oh, wait, you did a gig service and it's still causing problems? Let me look. Engineer looks down, goes, did you review your DMARC with any of our engineers? Because you're still running a Linksys over here and it can only do 100 megs because it's 15 years old. You can upgrade that thing to 10 gig if you want. You're still only going to get 100. So let's talk about like making this problem go away. What would that be worth to you? And we talk then about IT as a profit center. So I say, yes, these schools would have had to pay an extra $720,000 over the 10-year plan. Awesome. You know what's great about that $720,000 is if the schools have been told by their IT service provider years ago what the problem was, once we solved these problems, they were able to add on, I think, 2 more classrooms of 18 kids each. In a private school, they're paying $8,000 to $10,000 per kid. They are missing out on $360,000 a year in revenue because they don't have the physical space or the bandwidth to contain these students. Their teachers are spending all their time troubleshooting these problems. There's students not coming to the school because they don't have a Chromebook program, because they don't have AI programs, because they're missing out on everything that the public schools have or the private school down the street has. As an IT service provider, your job was to solve that problem 10 years ago. They don't care if it costs them an extra $72,000 a year now because you're making them $180,000 a year, including the cost of a new teacher. So when you think of yourself as a profit center, as a problem solver, bringing in solutions, you have to learn about the client first. And then your brain as an engineer will start snapping together solutions. I made these recommendations after one audit, very simple audit, and sitting down and talking to the teachers themselves and doing a SWAT session with them. That's all I did. And the SWAT session was really just a vehicle for me to communicate with them. I just wanted to hear them complain.
Well, and I think that's a big piece of this, right? A lot of the MSPs, earlier you kind of said that, again, I don't know the situation with those particular MSPs. You said that they were so narcissistic, they didn't care. I don't think it's that. Generally, I think generally it's that MSPs do a very good job of being a tier 2 tech and solving technical problems, but not understanding the business. And the whole idea of IT, whether you're an MSP or internal IT, is to make the business better, faster, cheaper. And so you can't do that without understanding the business, what's going on with the business, what they're trying to achieve, understanding their goals over the next 30, 90, 365 days, whatever, and realistically asking those questions of, what issues are you guys having as a business? How do we make you successful? And not only is that going to bring you revenue, it's going to make you a lot stickier with your clients because you're solving business issues for them, not fixing a computer. As a side note, where do you find a private school that's only charging $8,000 a year? I want to know more about this.
Yeah, I mean, I was spitballing that. I was trying to remember the number off the top of my head because my kids went there, and I'm like, that doesn't seem right.
Very low.
There are a lot of Catholic schools that are...
Well, you guys are in those rich cities. I'm in the Midwest,
Anyhow, Ryan, in the interest of time, I think we need to cut it off here. I hope this has answered your question about what should be happening at these quarterly reviews. If your MSP is not providing this sort of service to you, force them to do it, or find an MSP that will work with you in a way that is helping you advance your business. In the meantime, though, if you want to learn more about how to lead these kinds of conversations so that clients listen without using fear tactics or jargon, turn into the Humanized IT podcast next week. We'll be diving much more into this. Also, while you're here, if you've got a question that you'd like us to answer in a future episode, please drop it for us at blacksmithinfosec.com/ask. Adam, thank you for your time. I look forward to having this or continue this conversation next week.
All right. Thank you. Okay.
Get misty. Yeah, we're